Thank you. Samantha, will you call the members by name and then we can proceed?
Yes. All right, Madam Chair. So I will just call your name and let me know if you're here. Grant Anderson.
Here.
Charles Andrews. Okay. Scott Bender.
Celeste Garza for Scott Bender.
Okay. Okay. Bryce Christo. Bryce, are you there?
Bryce may need to hit *6 since everybody entered muted.
We'll come back to you. David Fabiano.
Here.
Angela Horn.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Jennifer Jack.
Here.
Thank you. David Janover.
Here.
Thank you. Kevin Lair.
Here.
Here. Thank you. Arian Larange. Okay, we'll come back. Paul Lopez. All right, we'll come back. Jamie McCracken. Right. Brad Novosek.
Here.
Thank you. Steve O'Brien. Right, we'll come back. Tim Oliver. I think so. Dana Oceani.
I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. Herman Pedrahita.
Present.
Thank you. Matt Reek. Thank you. Patrick Sage. Okay. Chris Salas.
Here.
Thank you. Emil Schmidt. All right. Brent Skoglund. Okay. David Smith.
Present.
Thank you. Brandon Squire. All right. Leticia Vargas.
Here.
Thank you. And Maria Angelica.
Present.
Thank you. All right. Was there anybody else that I forgot that is in fact here?
Hi, this is Patrick Sage, City of Glendale. I just got on the call.
All right. Thank you, Patrick.
Charles Andrews just jumped on the call as well.
Thank you, Charles. Anyone else? All right, then, Madam Chair, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Just to confirm, we do have a quorum. So
Yeah.
This meeting of the Mack Street Committee is called to order. As a reminder, please mute your microphone to eliminate any feedback. You will have the opportunity to be recognized at the time in which you can unmute your microphone and talk. You can also use the chat to type any question or comment. When you begin speaking, please state your name and your organization. Item number 2 is call to the audience. Members of the public were asked to submit written comments related to this meeting through the MAC website. Comments may be sent at any time leading up to this meeting, but must be received at least 1 hour prior to the posted start time of the meeting. This is the opportunity for the public to comment on items that fall under MAC's jurisdiction, but are not in the agenda, or that are in the agenda for discussion, but not for action. Samantha, did we receive any public comments? If so, please read them at this time.
We did not receive any comments, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's proceed with item 3, Transportation Staff Report. MAC staff member Kristen Meyer will now provide updates and a report to the committee. Please, Kristen, take it away.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I just have a few things to report. We have a new committee member, and I'd like to introduce Mr. Matthew Rigg. He is the Assistant City Traffic Engineer for the City of Goodyear, and he will now be a part of this fantastic group. So warm welcomes to you, Mr. Rigg. I'm going to put you on the spot, and if you'd like to unmute and say a few words, I think we're all excited to have you on board.
Yes, thank you everyone for allowing me to participate on this committee. Looking forward to it, and I know I've worked with a lot of you in the past, but not everyone, so looking forward to meet everyone and see what we can accomplish. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rigg. Second, a reminder to submit any arterial changes that you have to Steve Tate by the end of this month. We're going to plug those into our model for our spring air quality conformity. If you do have any questions, just reach out to Mr. Steve Tate or myself. We can help you with that. Also, after our last meeting, I sent out an email inviting you or others from your agency to attend the Federal Highways and MAG Mobility Data Business Plan Workshop. This workshop is free of charge and is going to be held on December 10th from 9 to noon. It is a virtual event, and it's to increase awareness of existing efforts and data collection and management in the region. And lastly, we received the RORF revenue updates from ADOT for the month of October. From October of last year to October of this year, we are up 16.3%, which is very exciting. For the year though, as of October, we're up a total of 6.1%. Madam Chair, that concludes my report. If I can answer any questions, please let me know.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Kristen? Hearing none, let's please proceed to item number 4. That is the approval of the November 10, 2020 meeting minutes. Please take a few minutes to review the minutes of the November 10th meeting if you have not already done so. Do any committee members have any revisions? Hearing none, could I have a motion to recommend approval of the meeting minutes?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second, Anderson.
Thank you. I do need to have a roll call for this vote. So Samantha, would you please call names and indicate yes or nay?
All right. So Grant Anderson,
Aye.
Charles Andrews,
Aye.
Celeste Garza,
Aye.
Bryce Christo,
Aye.
David Fabiano,
Aye.
Angela Horn,
Aye.
Jennifer Jack,
Aye.
David Hanover,
Aye.
Kevin Lair,
Aye.
Brad Novosek,
Aye.
thank you, Dana Oceani,
Aye.
Hermaine Pedrahita,
Aye.
Matt Rigg,
Aye.
Patrick Sage,
Aye.
thank you, Chris Salas,
Aye.
David Smith,
Aye.
Leticia Vargas.
Aye.
All right. And was there anybody I forgot?
Paul Lopez, City of Buckeye. Aye.
All right.
And Maria Angelica Deeb, aye.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
So with the motion and the second and everybody that was polled, the motion passes. Let's go to item number 5. That is the review of the PM10 paving of unpaved roads federal funding scenarios. On the October 13th, the Street Committee reviewed 6 applications and recommended those to be sent to the MAC Air Quality Technical Advisory Committee for scoring. The Air Quality Technical Advisory Committee reviewed cost-effectiveness scores based on the application data and recommended a proposed list of projects. Mr. Patrick Stone will now present the priority project listing. Patrick, please take it away.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Street Committee. As the Chairwoman said, name's Patrick Stone. I am the TIP Supervisor at MAG. I'm here to provide a brief presentation on the federal fiscal years FY23 and 24 paving unpaved roads. The requested action today is to approve the prioritized listing of projects, and this is consistent with the MAG federal funding program guidelines and procedures that were approved by MAG Regional Council back in June of 2015. Next slide, please. To start, I've included the non-attainment area maps for both PM10 and PM2.5 to set some context for today's discussion. PM2.5 area being down in Pinal County and the PM10 area being that in Maricopa County and portions of Pinal County. Next slide, please. So this slide, I wanted to kind of do a quick recap. At the start, this is what was in the original regional competitive programs call for projects for paving unpaved roads. You can see the funding amounts by year and by total. There were 6 requests that were received for a total of just over $11.2 million. One thing to call attention for the committee is there were no requests received for CMAQ 2.5 funding in Pinal County, so that funding isn't going to be entered in any of the subsequent slides you see and in the consideration of the prioritized list of projects. Next slide, please. So this slide takes the prioritized listing. This is actually what came out of the Air Quality Technical Advisory Committee. This is the prioritized listing of projects. I've included both the requested amount and then also the proposed year of construction. Next slide, please. So what I did is I took that previous slide, and what I've done is actually put it by year and showing both the funding available in the year and based on the Technical Advisory Committee score, funding requested, and then the balance of funding in each year. As you can see in this original scenario, we have a surplus in FY23, a deficit in FY24, and a total deficit of just over 1.1 million for the total. And as you can see at the bottom, again, the CMAQ 2.5 funding is not included in this consideration. Next slide, please. So here is the proposed programming for today. There are 2 items that are done. The first is moving the Gilbert Road project, or excuse me, the Town of Gilbert project from Muse Road from FY24 to FY23. And the other item, and you'll see it on the next slide, but is to also take the balance of funding that would happen in FY24 because of that shift and moving that funding into FY23. Next slide, please. So here you can see the same slide we saw previously. And what has happened now is the Town of Gilbert's project has moved up to FY23. The excess funding in FY24 has been moved up to FY23. And what this allows is it allows the full funding of the top 5 projects and a significant amount of funding on the 6th project, which was the City of Scottsdale project. Next slide, please. And so that takes us to the requested action, which would be to recommend approval of the prioritized listing of projects. Next slide. And that concludes my presentation, Madam Chair, members of the Street Committee. I'd be available for any questions.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for Patrick?
This is Jennifer Jack, Madam Chair. And Patrick, would the partial funding deficit for the City of Scottsdale project be eligible for any, I guess it's only street sweepers, right, that are eligible for the, what's it called, the extra funds?
For closeout funding.
Closeout, yes, thank you. I had a blank there.
Ms. Jack, members of the committee, actually, that's part of the advantage of having this project programmed in the TIP is it would be eligible for closeout once we get to FY23. So there would be the opportunity for the city to come back and request those funds in FY23 following the approved guidelines.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions? Hearing none, Samantha, will you please call the name of all the members and they will indicate a yay or nay? So do we have a motion?
I move we approve Anderson.
Thank
Second,
you.
second that motion, David Fabiano, Town of Gilbert.
Thank you. Now we have a motion from Grant Anderson as the second from David. So Samantha, would you call the name of all members and they will indicate yay or nay?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Grant Anderson,
Aye.
thank you. Charles Andrews,
Aye.
thank you. Celeste Garza. Celeste Garza. Okay. Bryce Christo,
Aye.
thank you. David Fabiano,
Aye.
thank you. Angela Horn,
Aye.
thank you. Jennifer Jack,
Aye.
thank you. David Hanover,
Aye.
thank you. Kevin Lair,
Aye.
thank you. Paul Lopez,
Aye.
thank you. Brad Novacek,
Aye.
thank you. Dana Oceani,
Aye.
thank you. Ramon Pedrahita,
Aye.
thank you. Matt Reig,
Aye.
thank you. Patrick Sage,
Aye.
thank you. Chris Salas,
Aye.
Emil Schmidt,
Aye.
thank you. Brent Scogland, there. David Smith,
Aye.
thank you. Leticia Vargas,
Aye.
thank you. And Maria Angelica,
Aye.
thank you. And was there anybody else that we forgot or that was not able to answer before? Okay, that should be everyone then.
Thank you. So with the motion and the second and with the members polled, the motion passes. Item number 6, the Street Committee Meeting 2021 tentative meeting schedule. A memo was sent out October 30th outlining the meeting schedule for 2021 for the Street Committee. It was also included in the agenda packet. Please take a few minutes to review the schedule if you have not at this time. What we would like to do is to have a motion to approve the 2021 Street Committee schedule.
So moved, Madam Chair. David Fabiano, Town of Gilbert.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
Second, Emil Schmidt, Apache Junction.
Thank you, Mel. As this requires a vote, Samantha, can you call the name of people and they will indicate a yay or nay?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. All right, we'll go through this again. Grant Anderson,
Aye.
thank you. Charles Andrews,
Aye.
thank you. Celeste Garza. I think we might have lost Celeste. All right, Bryce Christo,
Aye.
thank you. David Fabiano,
Aye.
thank you. Angela Horn,
Aye.
thank you. Jennifer Jack,
Aye.
thank you. David Hanover,
Aye.
thank you. Kevin Lair,
Aye.
thank you. Paul Lopez,
Aye.
thank you. Brad Novacek,
Aye.
thank you. Dana Oceani,
Aye.
thank you. Ramon Pedrahita,
Aye.
thank you. Matt Reig,
Aye.
thank you. Patrick Sage,
Aye.
thank you. Chris Salas, Chris Salas. Okay. Emil Schmidt,
Aye.
thank you. David Smith,
Aye.
thank you. Leticia Vargas,
Aye.
and Marie Angelica Deep,
Aye.
thank you. And was there anybody else that we forgot?
I was having technical difficulties. Aye. Chris Salas, Town of Florence.
Thank you, Chris.
Celeste Garza with Pinell County. I was also having the same. I'm an I as well.
Thank you, Celeste.
Thank you. With a motion and a second and with the vote of the members polled, the motion passes. Let's go to item number 7, please. Federal funding overview. Patrick Stone will provide an overview of the federal funding requirements and the options for transportation projects, including a review of the federal funding and project eligibility. Mr. Patrick Stone will provide a presentation.
Thank you again, Madam Chair, members of the Street Committee, allowing me for me to present to you again today. My second presentation is going to provide a brief high-level overview of federal aid programs and projects. This was a request that actually had come out of the November Street Committee, so more than happy to make this presentation to you today. Next slide, please. So brief overview of what I'm going to cover in the next few slides. I'm going to review regional funding sources, how they're applied to programs, briefly talk about the Transportation Programming Guidebook, and then hopefully something that may or may not be new to members of the committee. But I'm going to talk about another source called a guide to federal aid programs and projects. Next slide, please. So I made this presentation back in August to the management committee, called this the string slide. So what this really does, on the left-hand side, you see the sources of funding within the region, and on the right-hand side, you see the uses. Obviously, we have a diverse revenue portfolio, and then as equally well, we have a diverse source of programs. You can see the 3 life cycle programs at the top, non-life cycle transit, and then other. And most of our focus is really today going to be on that other category, and we'll get to that as we move forward. Next slide, please. So first is the old standby, the half-cent sales tax, RAR funding, however you want to call it. But this is the sales tax in the county. You can see this is primarily used to fund the life cycle programs, both arterial, freeway, and transit. Next slide, please. So regional funding, the ADOT 15% funds, not knowing people's familiarity, these are ADOT's HERF funds. So there's a portion of the Highway User Revenue Fund that is for ADOT, and through statute and State Transportation Board policy, 15.2% of that funding is then allocated to the MAG region and specifically to the Freeway Life Cycle Program. So it's another source of funding into the FLCP. Next slide, please. So ADOT discretionary, this covers the federal funds that ADOT allocates to the MAG region. This is made up of both statutory allocations specifically related to surface transportation and transportation alternatives, covers planning funds, statewide planning and research. And as you can see, really, I am so sorry, my apologies, I've gone ahead of slide. The discretionary funding, this is the ADOT funding that's given to the freeway life cycle and the transit life cycle programs. This is ADOT's funding. I was speaking to the MAG federal funding. My apologies. This is ADOT's federal funding. So this is a portion, the term is sometimes thrown around, if people are familiar with it, the RAC allocation or the Casa Grande Accords. People have heard those terminologies. It was an agreement made back in the 90s. But what it essentially says is 37% of the funding in the state is allocated to the MAG region. So these are those funds that are part of that 37%. Next slide, please. MAG federal funds. Now, these are the federal funds that are statutorily and discretionary allocated to the MAG region, including, as I spoke previously, surface transportation funding, planning funding, transportation alternatives, also congestion mitigation, which we talked about earlier with the paving unpaved roads. And as you can see, again, this is allocated to the arterial and transit life cycle programs, the non-life cycle transit, and then again, as we'll talk a little further, the other program. Next slide, please. MAG federal transit funds, these are the funds provided by FTA that fund the transit life cycle program, again, the TLCP, and then the non-life cycle program. Next slide, please. And I kind of wanted to call some attention to this because I think it's an important conversation, but this is the regional funding. These are the local funds. And as you can see, it's actually the most prevalent funding category. It applies to every bucket. These are the dollars the member agencies contribute towards project success. So you can see these go through all the life cycle programs, the transit non-life cycle program, and then of course the other funding. Next slide, please. So what I hope to do with this slide is kind of bring it all together and kind of explain what does it all mean. What this page is, this is actually an excerpt from the 2021 Transportation Programming Guidebook. And what you can see is you can see the three, and I apologize for the size, especially very small on my screen. I have my screen split. But you can see the three life cycle programs. And then what we really want to focus on is down in the bottom, the non-life cycle programs. But you can really see a diverse usage of the funds, the different types of funds and the different categories. So where we see funding for ITS improvements, air quality improvements, and you can see how those funds are allocated across the region. So it really kind of paints a picture of a very diverse funding portfolio, if you will. Next slide, please. So kind of part of the discussion that had come out of the November Street Committee meeting, and I think it's a kind of a challenge based on naming conventions, if you will. So the question became, what's formula funding and what is grant funding? So federal funding program by MAG, if you think of what's in the Transportation Improvement Program in the TIP, it's formula driven. There's funding methodologies that identify how much is available and in what buckets. It's very pretty prescribed. And then certain funding sources, and I talked about this previously, the urban surface transportation and the transportation alternatives programs, they're actually statutorily defined. It says the MAG region gets a certain amount and based on populations. Grants, on the other hand, they're competitive. They're specifically defined and they center around a notice of funding opportunities. So agencies actually directly apply for those grants. And for MAG, we're not involved in that process. The only thing is if one of the member agencies is successful in getting the grant, we'd be responsible for actually programming that project into the TIP as a regionally significant project. And so what I wanted to do is kind of get to this last bullet point. And I thought this was actually really good because I just accepted this as fact when the FAST Act came out back in late 2015, that they took the Surface Transportation Program and they chose to call it the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program, and they threw that grant word in there. And so I did some research, figured out why did they decide to call it a block grant program? What does it mean? And so what it was Congress chose to rename the program as, converting the longstanding STP into STBGP. And what it was is to acknowledge that the program has the most flexible eligibilities. And we'll talk about this in a minute, but it is the most eligible category of federal funding. And that's what they wanted to capture with the terminology of block grant. There was some value in that to FHWA. Next slide, please. So moving on, formula funding MAG receives, it's allocated to specific programs. And you kind of saw that on the slide, the excerpt from the guidebook. So it's either allocated to at a life cycle level, the arterial, freeway, transit, or we do it through a regionally competitive program call for projects, which you've seen these last few months with the street committee reviewing some of those calls for projects. And this is, Madam Chair, back to the point that you had brought up in the introduction. All phases and work activities are eligible for federal funding. So, design's eligible, right-of-ways eligible, utilities, construction. But there are program-specific requirements are put in place for the funds program by MAG. So as we do calls for projects, as we do certain allocations, there may be restrictions saying, this call for projects is only going to be for construction, or it's going to only cover these eligible work activities. And that's more a process than a federal policy. And one thing that did come up, and we'd had a question come up actually from our partners at ADOT, and one of our member agencies, was about ADOT's review fees. They used to be called PMDR, now they're called PDA. But those can actually be federalized, so they are eligible for federal funding. It has to be a part of the process, and the key point that I wanted the committee members to take away is the last part of that sentence, which says the funding has to be programmed as federal at the time of project initiation. Those dollars obviously kick off the project, and so they have to be federalized prior to authorization and prior to the project getting started. One thing to keep in mind, we can't go back and federalize a project or federalize a phase after it's already begun. So if we started non-federal, the phase continues non-federal. Excuse me. And then one other thing I wanted to call a little special attention to, it's twofold in that last bullet point. So the past, and for folks who may not understand the federal process, there's two parts to the federal funding equation, if you shall. There's the FAST Act, which is the transportation bill. It's the authorization for FHWA, and it covers the 5 years. Well, now we're into a 6th year with the extension. So it sets those parameters, it sets those apportionments, it sets kind of the the space the funding works in. Then every year there's a budget bill. The budget bill is actually what kind of says, here's how much money you get to spend. They don't give us 100%. They never have. And actually the last few years, that percentage of cash to our potential is somewhere in the low 90%. But what was critical and what was actually a benefit to MAG and our member agencies is this highway infrastructure program. These were specific additional dollars allocated in that annual budget bill that a significant portion was actually allocated to the MAG region. And these were in fiscal years 2018, 2019, and then 2020 last year as well. The reason I wanted to kind of bring this up and it's quite topical is we are currently under a continuing resolution. So the federal funding is only in place through this Friday, December 11th. You've heard probably a lot of talk. A lot of those budget bills are tied into any potential COVID-19 relief package. But that's the curiosity always is, will Congress put any additional infrastructure funding into that final bill? There's talk that there's hope that the bill that gets done this week will actually be for the full year. If not, it'd be another continuing resolution possibly into the spring. And the reason why that's critical, and for those that don't know, I used to do the federal funding at ADOT. When we have a continuing resolution, we get a percentage of the funding. So this first pass was about 20%. Well, that means you only have 20% of the cash to deliver the program. So depending on what projects are coming in and what requests are coming in, it makes it very difficult to actually deliver projects. So just another challenge. I saw a good article this morning, finally just saying that enough of the continuing resolutions, it's time to hopefully find a different solution. Next slide, please. So Transportation Programming Guidebook comes out every summer. Samantha, who assists on the street committee, is the champion of this and did all the amazing work on this. I was very fortunate to come in, I think, a couple days before it was about ready to be published. So, but it's a wonderful tool. Especially for someone brand new to MAG, and I assume for someone to an agency, it really does kind of walk you through all that is MAG programming. Good information about targets and performance measures and the different categories of funding, the different uses of funding. We'll be doing a significant overhaul this coming year. You guys will actually see that coming out. One thing we will be reaching out to member agencies is to kind of ask, what do you think of the guidebook? What do you use it for? How do you like it? So stay tuned for that. But it is a phenomenal tool. It really does kind of encapsulate everything we do. And I look forward to it. I look forward to really getting involved with it this coming year. Next slide, please. So this is the one I really wanted to focus folks' attention to. I think this one is it's a wonderful tool. It is. I will state, if you go look at this, and we'll certainly provide the links after the meeting. If you go look at this document, it's not the most exciting read. It's just text-based. There's no two ways about it. The only graphic is the one you see on that cover. But what this is everything about federal funding, and it's wonderfully packaged, and it does a great job. And the biggest thing is, and I highlighted it in the bullet points, but it's by program category. So if you're an agency and you have a question of eligibility, you're like, hey, we want to do a particular type of potentially a pedestrian enhancement project. Is this eligible for CMAQ funding? Is this eligible for STBGP funding? Well, this document actually gets into that. It explains the eligibility. It has a kind of very interesting background section of each of them. And it also, for policy wonks, people that really enjoy this, it does actually go to the United States Code, which is 23 USC, where transportation is covered. And then it also goes into the Code of Federal Regulations, CFR, 23 CFR, where the rules are there, the rules and the regulations. So it is a great tool. Next slide, please. So I apologize. I know this is small to read, but what I wanted to do was give you kind of some flavor of this. It is just there was no good way to really capture these pages out of the document. But what this is CMAQ. And what it's really showing, there's a part that was a lot more, it's more ADOT specific, but goes through the codes. But it kind of covers the federal share, the applicability, the history, and which I think is actually very interesting because a lot of the programs have evolved over time. You can see where different eligibility requirements have happened over time. And then you can kind of, the one thing is it does explain what eligible activities are included within each of the programs. And it covers every federal aid highway program funding source. And I believe, next slide, I think that should be the last slide. Yep, that was it. But I thank you so much. I know this was somewhat fast, somewhat high level. Obviously, I could spend hours talking about this. I do enjoy this subject a lot. But Madam Chair, members of the committee, I would certainly be welcome to entertain any questions or comments.
Thank you very much, Patrick, for the presentation. I really enjoyed this string slide. I would like to know, does any member have any questions for Patrick? Okay, hearing none, I do have a question, as always.
Of course.
So you mentioned that the ADOT fees are eligible to be federally funded. So I do have a two-part question for that. One is, when you were referring to the project initiation, are you meaning when we apply for a grant as an agency?
Madam Chair, great question, actually, and thank you for asking that. I was actually referring more to the initiation with the ADOT local public agency section, and that's more where you're actually getting the project initiated, beginning the intergovernmental agreement between the agency and ADOT. So it's at that point where it would be, because that's ultimately, that's what starts the project. And for people who may not have experienced the process, you initiate a project with ADOT, they assign a project manager, assign a project number, federal aid project number. But the other thing they do is develop the agreement between the agency and ADOT. And at the end of the execution of that agreement, the expectation is the agency submits that fee, that administration fee, to ADOT. So it would have to have been in place prior to that point, Maria.
Okay. So if I understand correctly, the way it works, at least for a C agency like us, is that costs will not be reimbursed until we get the project obligated. That means that we have the federal funding to continue construction. So even if we include the ADOT review fees as federal, they will not reimburse us for anything that is prior to that obligation, but that can be part of the 5.7% match. And if the ADOT fees come later, then they will reimburse us, correct?
Madam Chair, you know what? We may have to take that conversation. There was a lot in that question. Yeah, I would have to, I might want to speak with you further on that just to get clarification. We can obviously provide that response back to all the members of the committee. It is a good question. But yeah, timing is an interesting item, and especially for CA agencies, because there isn't an agreement executed between the agency and ADOT. So yeah, let's have a conversation, because I think that is a good conversation, and we can certainly provide a response, an appropriate response.
Of course, and I would appreciate it. Thank you very much. Does anybody have additional questions?
Madam Chairman, I do have a question.
Please, Grant.
Patrick, you mentioned that those two guidebooks are going to be available by links. Is there any way to get a published copy of either one of those?
Mr. Anderson, Madam Chair, the federal one, I know at one time, Grant, they were actually publishing that. I've not seen it in the last two iterations. Everything has been on the FHWA website as a PDF file. Mr. Anderson, indulge me for a second. Samantha, not to put you on the spot, but do we actually publish hard copies of the guidebook still? I know when I was in my ADOT day, I would get one, once a year. I believe I would get one.
Yes, we usually would be publishing hard copies of them, so it would be available. We had not yet done it this year, obviously, with COVID, but I believe we should be able to at least get a few copies, and we can get one out to you.
Thank you. That'd be great.
Sure.
Hearing no additional questions or comments, I do want to thank you, Patrick.
No, thank you.
Let's go to item number 8, please. That is the request for future agenda items. Are there any requests by the street committee members for any item on future agenda?
Again, this is Anderson. I have a comment. This morning, we were presented with the RORF numbers, but we missed the HERF numbers. That should at least go to the director's report when we get it, I would think. We used to get that too.
Mr. Anderson, Madam Chairwoman, I appreciate the question, and I will make sure to get those and update through email.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you do have future agenda items, please reach out to Kristen and I, and we'll make sure to address them. Please, let's proceed with item number 9, updates from member agencies. And this is an opportunity to provide members to present a brief summary of current events. I would like to invite all members to share information related to ongoing street-related project activities in their jurisdictions. I would like to acknowledge anyone that wants to present any updates. Does anybody have any updates they want to share? If not, I will share one from the city of Mesa. We just distributed our survey. We're surveying people that bike within the city of Mesa to find out what their experience is biking, what new facilities they want to see, and what routes are most used. I have sent it to some member agencies so that they can distribute within, because we recognize that not only people that reside in Mesa bike in Mesa. So if you are interested, please reach out to me. I'll be happy to provide the link of that survey. Any additional information members want to share? Hearing none, let's please go to agenda item number 10. The next meeting of the street committee will be held at 1 p.m. on Tuesday, January 12th via virtual conference unless otherwise notified. Let's go please to item number 11. Could I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved, Madam Chair. David Fabiano, Town of Gilbert.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second, Jennifer.
Thank you. We do not have to vote for this, so at this time, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.